few people I work with are also on the call, so I'll let y'all introduce yourselves, and then we can get into the presentation.
My name is Brad Walshmet. I also work with Kimley Horn, and I'm also part of the NDOT traffic calming team. And Chris, do you want to go next?
Sure. My name is Chris Sandwith, and I am with NDOT with the traffic calming program. I handle the day-to-day process and hand it off to Marty.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Marty Sewell. I'm the planning manager at NDOT, and the traffic calming program has recently moved under my supervision. So this is my first meeting with the team, or with neighborhood like this, and so I'm excited to hear how all of this goes, and really looking forward to hearing your input.
Well, before I drop off, one reason that Kathleen Murphy had said she wanted to have this on WebEx was so that it could be recorded. Is this being recorded, and we will be able to like offer a link to neighbors who aren't here so they can hear your presentation?
Yes, ma'am.
Hey,
it's being recorded right now.
This is Kathleen. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
We can hear you, but not. Are you
So,
nameless phone number
the
somewhere?
webs are not working. Grace, hold on just a second. The web links are not working whatsoever through the app or on the web for me. So I can only call in, which is not going to be great to be able to see what you're presenting or anything. So I will keep trying on this end. If not, I might just listen in and get an update from NDOT later. Are all of y'all on the web though?
I am.
It looks like some people are and some people aren't. I'm going to have to drop off, and I will log back on as soon as I can, probably in half an hour if we're still going. So thank you so much. I cannot tell you how grateful we were to get notice that we were approved for traffic calming, because we really need it. We have lots of dogs, babies, small children, elderly people. We have a large community of observant Jews that walk to synagogue on Saturday. I am scared to death all the time that we are going to have a pedestrian injury or fatality. So I'm truly grateful for this. Thank you.
Thanks, Grace. We'll talk to you later.
Excellent. Well, what we like to do is we like to go ahead and go into a presentation, as Laura mentioned, and I'm going to go ahead and try to share my screen right now. And I always like to make sure, I've learned with all these virtual meetings, I just want to make sure, Laura, can you see my screen okay?
Yes, it looks like you haven't hit views to start the presentation, but I can see that PowerPoint.
Correct. And
Okay.
then, and now is it kind of showing up full screen now?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, great. Well, everyone, we appreciate you coming. What we kind of want to do tonight is go through kind of three main topics. What is traffic calming? The process which NDOT uses to determine what neighborhoods can receive traffic calming, and then some of the options for actual traffic calming measures that can be considered on the streets that you applied for. That's sort of what we want to spend about 10 minutes talking with you, and then talk about some ideas for what might be most suitable on your streets. And again, I apologize. Laura, I just want to make sure, can you see the 3 E's of traffic calming?
Yes.
Great. All right, I'll stop doing that, everybody. I just want to make sure it's working okay. So there are 3 E's of traffic calming. The first is education, and this meeting right here is a great example. We get to talk to you all about traffic calming, and you get to talk to us about what you're the expert of, which is your neighborhood and your streets and the good and the bad of what is happening on your streets right now. So we're grateful to be here with you. The second thing is enforcement. Traffic enforcement of posted speed limits is definitely a part of traffic calming. I will say that is one thing that people on this call do not have as much control over when it comes to enforcement. You can certainly make requests, but we are really here to talk about more the third thing here, the engineering. What are some engineering things we can do on your neighborhood streets to really talk about traffic calming and basically the speeds that vehicles are traveling on your streets. So what is traffic calming? They're typically physical solutions with the intent of reducing speeds. We want to look to be encouraging lower speeds at the speed limit or below over the lengths of your streets. And, focusing on cut through traffic. These are public streets. We can't, gate it off or completely stop cut through traffic, but we can look for some engineering solutions for traffic calming that maybe will lower the speeds and maybe will deter some of the cut through traffic. For example, some of your streets like Valley and Aberdeen that are kind of parallel to West End. That's what we can be looking at. And of course, looking at residential streets, which is what we're here to talk to you all about here in your neighborhood. I want to pause. We are here to talk about traffic calming, but you may have some other topics that you want to make sure NDOT or Nashville knows about. We want to make sure everyone knows that if you go to nashville.gov, you see this big arrow right here pointing at a red button, Hub Nashville. It is a wonderful tool, whether there's a tree that's fallen or a pothole or anything you feel like Nashville, the city, should know about that you think needs to be addressed. You can submit pretty much any request here to this Hub Nashville, and it goes to the right department, the right person at the city of Nashville. So we always like to make sure that everyone on the call knows about this feature. But of course, you don't have to do that for traffic calming because we are here with you today. That's what we're here to kind of guide you through. And then we also want to make sure that you understand there's a Walk and Bike Nashville survey out right now. I want to pause. Chris, is this survey still up or is it closed now?
I believe it ends the end of October, so 31st.
Excellent. Well, this is the last PR, I promise everyone, but there's a very important Walk and Bike Nashville plan, not just for your neighborhood, but for the whole city. And we just wanted to give some PR and say if you wanted to visit this link and take the survey, we'd love to get your input, all citizens of Nashville input. Thank you for your patience, and we'll go back to the traffic calming. So as of January 2020, Nashville had received over 100 applications from neighborhoods, and through a process, 24 were selected in Cherokee Park. You all were one of the selections, which is why we're here talking to you today. Now, we have learned there's a lot of uncertainty sort of on how NDOT chooses the neighborhoods for traffic calming. And so we like to educate because every neighborhood that applies for traffic calming is scored out of 100 points, and it's really data driven. We look at the crash history on your streets. We actually measure speeds and compare it to the posted speed limit. So how fast are cars going compared to what should they be going? And then we also look at streets, whether they have things like bike lanes or sidewalks. And then also if there's things that are going to really increase people wanting to walk and bike on these residential streets, like schools or parks or even churches or synagogues. So every neighborhood gets a score out of a maximum possible 100 points. And Cherokee Park was in the top 24 of that scoring. And so that's why we're here today talking to you all. And I'm going to turn it over to Laura Kelly and kind of let her talk about y'all's neighborhood in particular and some of the traffic calming measures.
Yeah, well, first we want to look at the 3 streets that were selected and are included with Cherokee Park. So the first one is Cherokee Road between Valley and Aberdeen is the limits for Cherokee Road. This was the road that forced the selection of y'all's neighborhood being in that 24 top neighborhoods because it was ranked 13th overall. Aberdeen Road was also considered and it was ranked 106th. And then Valley Road was also considered. So in the next slide, these 3 roads are shown highlighted, the one in blue being Cherokee Road, and that was the one that was selected, and Valley Road and Aberdeen Road are the 2 in green that we're also considering due to the fact that Cherokee was considered. So the limits on Aberdeen and Valley are between Cherokee and Wilson Boulevard, and then Cherokee is between Aberdeen and Valley. So it's just over about 1.5 miles of roadway that we're considering, but we're definitely open to hearing like Lauderdale and Mockingbird were mentioned as potentially needing some of these traffic calming measures that I'll get into. So I want to stop here and see if there's any questions before moving into traffic calming measures.
This is Trisha Scott again. Is this information publicly available for people? Like, I live on Cherokee. Could somebody, pull that information from public records and know that I live on the 13th most, I don't know, traffic calming needed street?
So I think the question is the prioritization list public record? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. Thank you for summarizing.
Gotcha. Excellent. I just want to make sure. So I'm going to turn that over to Chris with NDOT because he been working directly for the city. He may know that better. Chris, do you happen to know if that prioritization list is anywhere public? I'm not sure. That's why I'm asking.
Previously, I don't believe we've made the prioritization list public. We've just shown, typically graphically, the neighborhoods that were selected and the ones that ended up just below. But I can double check previously in our files if it has been.
Okay. It does. I mean, I'd actually prefer it not to be public, I think, but
okay.
it's fine. I was just asking.
Right. And so previously there's been a graph. Graphically, it's shown that the neighborhood selected, it has a line where the cutoff was and shows, with a bar graph, the ranking of the neighborhoods, but it doesn't show, the raw data of it.
Chris, this is Councilwoman Kathleen Murphy. Please clarify. This isn't like the 13th most dangerous street in all of Nashville. It is.
No. This is just
correct.
Right. This is just of the application neighborhoods that we have applications for. It was ranked.
And this is Brad Walshman. I want to clarify. I wouldn't even frame it up as the dangerous street. I don't think. I want to make sure everyone understands of the neighborhoods that applied for traffic calming. They go through a scoring system. 40% of that 100% score is crash history, but then the other 30% is the speeds, and then 15% is are people likely to be walking on the street because there's no sidewalks, and then another 15% are people likely to be walking because there's parks and schools and churches nearby. So it's sort of a crashes is part of it, and safety is important because that's why we're here. But this is not a danger ranking. It is a traffic calming kind of evaluation. I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you.
All right, Laura, do you want to go into traffic calming measures?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
Oh, first, something that we've been looking into also is the difference in the type of street. So the way that Metro Nashville classifies streets. So starting on the right side of this screen, and for those that are on the phone, there's 3 main types of roadways that we classify. So arterial streets, that's something like West End Avenue. We're not looking at West End for traffic calming, but just to give a frame of reference for the other types of streets. West End would be a great example of an arterial. Moving over to the right side of the screen are local streets. So 2 examples of that would be Aberdeen Road and Valley Road. And then what serves to connect local streets to arterials is like Cherokee Road, which is a collector. And so throughout the traffic calming measures that I'm going to go into, different measures are appropriate for different types of roads due to the speed and the amount of vehicles on the road, and really due to the road's purpose. And so moving into the first of the measures that we'll be talking about today is narrowing. So looking at your streets, it appears that this was kind of already done with Cherokee Road, where a bike lane was striped in order to create the appearance of a more narrow roadway. So this is really just striping on the road. So it's a really unintrusive measure. And it does work to limit speed by making it seem like slower speeds are more natural to drivers. And so Cherokee Road is an example of that, where striping that white line on the edge of the road makes it appear that you should be going a little bit slower. So this is a lower cost alternative, and this can be done on collectors or local streets. The next one that we'll look into is signage and markings. So two different ideas here. So with on the left of the screen, it's one of those radar signs that as you go over it, it gives you feedback on what your speed is in comparison to the posted speed limit. And these are pretty common around Metro Nashville. And then another thing we look at are markings. So the screen shows a unique example of these diagonals that are striped in the roadway. And again, similar to narrowing, the purpose of these is to just create a visual change. So these are on Blackman Road, a bit south, I guess, of your neighborhood. These exist, but it's really, again, just to signify to drivers that they need to slow down and that something is happening and it's not just a straight shot down a roadway where they don't really have to slow down at all. Okay, so the traffic circles are appropriate at intersections, and we want to really clarify that these are not roundabouts. So they're appropriate where two streets intersect, and usually these are found in residential neighborhoods, whereas roundabouts would more be appropriate on larger arterials. And their purpose is to reduce vehicular speeds when entering and passing through the intersection. So as shown in the photos, there's some signage that directs you around the intersection rather than just going straight left or right. And these are also found around Nashville. There's a couple really good examples near Belmont. So there's a lot of evidence around Nashville that these work. We will say that sometimes people indicate that they are a bit confused by them, or they, people get confused by turning left in front of them. So we want to install these in places where there's a lot of good sight distance and where there's enough space for them, so we don't have to take anybody's property. We definitely want to avoid that in all of these measures, but specifically this one. Okay. So chicanes are the next traffic calming measure to look at. And there's really two different types. Shown on the left side of the screen is an example where there's two directions of traffic coming against one another, and one direction has to yield to oncoming traffic because it creates effectively a one-way street. And on the right, this is an example where cars just have to kind of slow down as if they were going through a curve in the roadway. However, it's not a real curve. So both of these can exist. We'd probably consider the one on the left where one car has to stop, where there's lower volumes, more of a local street. But then on the right, that would be considered probably also for a local street, but maybe where there's more vehicles. And we classify this as a type of horizontal deflection. So that graphic on the bottom right, the drawn out one, is a really good example of that, where this road prior to the installation of chicanes was kind of just a straight shot, very easy to speed through. But with those bulb outs, kind of have a chevron pattern on them that forces vehicles to do a little bit of a weave. So that's horizontal deflection. Moving into vertical deflection, I'll start with speed tables. So speed tables are longer. They cross the entire width of the roadway, and they are flat on top. So when your vehicle's going over them, all four of your tires can be on them at once. So these are not speed bumps or speed bumps, which you may see in like a mall parking lot. These definitely slow speed a lot more gradually. They're not quite as an aggressive bump to potentially damage your car or be really loud. So these are appropriate on higher speed roadways, but when I say higher speeds, just relative to some of the other mechanisms. So around 30 miles an hour. That's the type of roadway we'd put this on, and then it would reduce the speed down to around 20 miles an hour. So you can go a little bit faster over these than the following mechanism, but these are still a great option for a collector type roadway or a local roadway. But moving into speed cushions, these are the next alternative, and this is what I was mentioning would be a good option for a lower speed roadway, like a local road. And there's really great examples of these that have been installed in Nashville too. But the way that these work are there's gaps in the cushions. So there's three cushions in the photo on the left with gaps in between them. So what that is for is so like passenger vehicles, trucks, that type of thing, they have to go over the speed cushion because you can't position your wheels to avoid them. But emergency vehicles are able to straddle the speed cushion in the center, and they're able to traverse without having to slow down, because that was something that's a concern for sure, is if most passenger cars are slowing down to 15 to 20 miles an hour, we still want fire trucks, emergency vehicles to still be able to get through. So these are good on streets that are about 25 miles an hour. And they provide a comfortable ride when going at that speed, or a little bit less, like 20, 15 miles an hour. So those last two examples are good options for vertical deflection, where other measures aren't appropriate, and in locations that they've tried other methods and they haven't worked, or there's a lot of pavement that's just straight and people are going to speed, which sounds like it's the case in your neighborhood, where people are cutting through. The installation of speed tables and speed cushions are great at, I guess, prohibiting that speeding through a neighborhood street. So that is the traffic calming measures that NDOT considers. So now we really want to hear from y'all and see what you guys think about these measures. Is it something that you've seen work in another neighborhood, or rather something you haven't seen work in another neighborhood? And what type of measures you'd like to see maybe on your road, or a road that you travel on frequently.
This is Trisha Scott again on Cherokee. Sorry. Is it already a foregone conclusion that the speed limit will drop to 25 on Cherokee?
Well, right now the speed limit on Cherokee is 30. So
Right.
usually at the speed tables, a little bit before them, in both directions, another speed limit sign is posted that indicates what speed you should be going over the table in that case. So the remainder would remain 30.
Okay.
Hi, this is Paige. I'm on corner of Mayfair and Valley. And I was just, oh, you mentioned signage. Didn't that obviously include stop signs, correct?
So stop signs are not considered a form of traffic calming. NDOT and really engineers in general, we want stop signs to be put where stop signs need to be based on an intersection, not just to slow traffic. I think it was Grace earlier who even said that she's noticed some people, even neighbors, run stop signs or are unclear on which stop sign should be at what leg. So something NDOT can look at is, should an always stop be considered? Or should the stop signs be flipped? But it wouldn't be for traffic calming. It would just be for good intersection signage or control at that intersection.
Okay, yeah, because I mean I've lived here for like 20 years, and it's been so difficult to get a four-way stop here, and I'm on Valley, where people are, it's rush hour back and forth, and they are zooming through because I'm obviously parallel to West End, and so the only thing is it's so instant on Valley. It's like there's stop signs and then there's not. And, it's just like, what can we not have, all four-way stops, so it's consistent, because I think people get confused. And I've almost witnessed 3 accidents, a pedestrian getting run over. I can't, and the list goes on. It's just been really, really bad. And I also have the walk bike Nashville signs. I'm on the corner that are green, but they do not show up. So a suggestion would be maybe making them neon or something, because they blend in with the grass. I mean, tried so many things, but that's a lot of material I've just gone over. But I guess the main thing is just wondering if, I know calming, but wondering if they can be consistent with four-way stop signs too, as well as the other traffic calming measures.
Gotcha. So as part of the traffic calming program, we would probably not be looking at stop signs, but we do have NDOT folks. So Chris, I'm gonna put you on the spot at NDOT. Is that the type of thing that NDOT could do an intersection evaluation along the valley to see if the stop signs are stopping the streets they should be stopping?
My best suggestion for that would be to get on Hub Nashville and maybe point out some of the intersections that you're talking about, and they'll get working on a traffic study to see if it's warranted to add a four-way stop, or maybe even, if there's a two-way stop, adding a sign that says that cross traffic doesn't stop. So you can go through Hub Nashville. I'll make sure I'll get with our people that are over your district and just get an idea of what's been done in the past, and if there's anything we can do now. And we'll send out after this meeting, we'll get together and send out the notes and the PowerPoint that Brad and Laura presented. So we'll put a note in there kind of following up as well.
Okay, that'd be great if you could do that, because to be honest with you, 20 years I've had a motorcycle cop in my driveway. I've had one of those machines that it's portable, with catches the speed coming down the hill at Mayfair. There's this large hill, and I've done so much, and then it's just, and we do have one of those signs that says cross traffic. This is a two-way stop, but that just doesn't deter. So anyway, it's been for me, I've been trying for 20 years. I've gone through Jason Holloman, the other Metro Council people, and nothing seems to happen. And like I said, working in my yard, I've witnessed 2 major accidents. Just the other day, I almost saw a pedestrian get killed. I mean, we've got everything from skateboarders to babies to dogs to people to just like Grace was saying. And this is and we're the closest road to West End. So we are the cut through. Aberdeen isn't. We are. So, and I just hope they can do something, because it's just taken so long. And I'm not the only one over here. My neighbors feel the same way. So, but I just want to let you know and see if we can hopefully do something.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And we appreciate it.
It's just very scary,
Yeah.
This is Katie Douglas over at 208 Mayfair. I guess, were you guys asking for us to comment on those 6 things, like what we thought would work?
Yeah, so what we like to do is we like to balance the engineering behind it, where we as the engineers look at these streets on what we think is probably most appropriate, but we don't like to do that in a vacuum. We like to talk with you all and hear from you, since you live on these streets. So it's a blend of, we want to hear from you, but we're also going to combine that with sort of our engineering opinion as we start looking at your streets and which of these solutions might make the most sense.
Sure. And I would just like to say, so I also live on Mayfair, and I'm not sure if y'all been over here there, and I apologize if I'm repeating anything I missed the first couple of minutes of the meeting. But I think the biggest issue really for all the streets is that I think a lot of times people are end up going too fast, because you really are coming down a hill. And I will be honest, I have lived at Mayfair for now 13 years. And before I have kids, I'm pretty sure I went way too fast down the hill. I just didn't realize it, because you are going so fast. You don't realize that your car just starts going. So I don't know which of those options tends to kind of really force people to reduce the speed kind of once you get down the hill and keep going. Because I think some of it is unintentional just because the hill's so steep, and so then they just keep going.
Right. I think what NDOT has seen success on is some of the vertical measures where cars must drive over something. Likely mostly speed cushions. That where the fire emergency vehicles can still kind of straddle it and help someone when they're having an emergency. For some of the roads like Cherokee that are considered collectors, those might be more like speed tables, which are the larger ones that Laura referenced. But some of those vertical measures are usually what we try to look at. The traffic circles are also something, just they tend to be a little more expensive and they can't always fit in the intersections. So we can look at those as well, but they may not always work or fit. But that's something we could also consider as far as what we see the most of around.
Yeah. I think the speed, personally, and I am the one on Mayfair that has probably all the kids on Mayfair with the 5 kids, and I just put an empty stroller in the middle of the street. I'm not gonna lie, because everyone slams on their brakes and doesn't hit my children. But I'm like all for speed tables or speed humps or whatever you want to call it down, honestly, any of the streets, and I would guess a lot of the neighbors are also.
Okay. Now
I am too.
go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry, but I'm with her on that. Anything like the speed cushion, or even signage with the 25 miles an hour written on the street, or the signage itself, or I think any of those ones that you recommended for the local streets would be great. Any and all.
Now, one thing, so let's talk about the streets because this is great. Cherokee Park, the streets that were in the application from a few years ago were Cherokee Road and then Valley Road and Aberdeen Road. So roads that were not in the application, but we can still consider with you all were Lauderdale, Mockingbird, and Mayfair. Those streets were not in the application, but if desired, we could also look at those. The thing that's going to be the biggest constraint is the budget. City Council has approved a pretty robust budget for traffic calming. And so when you average that out over the neighborhoods, we have to kind of stay within that budget. And so if there's a desire to add extra streets, we can certainly consider that, and we may have to follow up with you all as we get into this, thinking about, okay, which streets are the most important. But Cherokee, Aberdeen, and Valley were the 3. Is there interest in considering other streets, or are those the main 3?
So I live on Lauderdale and I walk my dogs every night. And that one curve on Lauderdale, the one that's kind of closest to Cherokee, scares me every time I walk around it because it's such a sharp curve. And the neighbors there have very large bushes and you really can't see around the curve. So if I'm walking with my dogs, I'm always terrified that someone's going to come around the curve and not see us.
Right.
I think that's that's where we had the wreck recently. May or may not have been a DUI situation, but
okay.
That's a very scary curve to walk around. And I am not a fan of anything vertical that you have to drive over. It's just uncomfortable to drive over, but it does seem like that's the best option to slow people down. A lot of the other things you mentioned, people are probably just going to ignore and drive right through.
Right. And we hear what you're saying about, we'll make a note of that with the Lauderdale curves. And we also hear your concern about the vertical measures. We can take a look at that. I will say that some of the other options to slow people in curves, anything else that would make a car move their steering wheel could be a little challenging if they're already in a curve. So some of the vertical measures maybe be able to help, but we hear you're saying you may not like. So we may have to balance that if the curves are a focus area, but the vertical measures are really what could possibly do some help. We may have to balance that, and when we come back, we just kind of all take a look at that together.
Hey, this is Paige again. I'm sorry, but I would love if we could add Mayfair, just because it's I'm at the corner of Mayfair and Valley, and it's a school and a church up there, and it's just everyone's walking everywhere around here, and that'd be great since we've got the church and the school right there as well, to consider.
Okay. Now, just to make sure, is that Mayfair basically just between West End and Valley, or do you see speeding even between Valley and Lauderdale?
Valley and Lauderdale.
Between Valley and Lauderdale too.
Okay.
Yeah, those are the people that are coming down Valley and, going all the way back down to Cherokee to get back on West End during the rush hours. So,
Okay.
and that's where the stop signs are real inconsistent and they're blowing through because there's not four-way stops, all four-way stops. So,
Just curious.
Honestly, I know you guys don't do this, but it seems like if they were all four-way stops, like all of this would be a mute conversation.
yeah, I brought that up earlier. Yeah, you may miss that. I know. I agree. I brought that up earlier, and so, but this isn't, since you said this isn't, it's not a part of traffic calming.
Yeah, I know you guys don't do it. I think when like they said Valley was on the list, it's really Valley because Valley crosses with all of the streets, which is kind of the problem.
Exactly.
Okay.
So Paige, do you want to go on Hub Nashville and request the stop sign, whatever they do, assessment? Or do you want me to put it on there?
Yeah, sorry. You broke up a little bit. Sorry, could you repeat that?
Yeah, I was just wondering if someone else was going to go on Hub Nashville and request the stop sign evaluation, or if you wanted me to do that.
I'll do it and you can do it. I've done it like 5 times in the past 20 years. Maybe this time it'll work for you. But I'll do it. Yeah, I'll do it too. Hopefully.
Hey, y'all, this is Councilwoman Kathleen Murphy. I know that we have turned in several stop sign requests and several little traffic calming projects throughout this whole neighborhood. And pretty much every time the additional stop signs have come back as unwarranted. That is something that if it comes back unwarranted, the neighborhood can petition the Traffic and Parking Commission to override the evaluation. But at this point, I guess the neighborhood has not decided to do that, or I have not been notified that anyone wanted to do that. But so if you request that and it comes back as denied, that's something that we can talk about and see if you want to petition the Traffic and Parking Commission to do it, because we have turned all of these streets y'all have talked about. I've turned them in, y'all have turned them in, and quite often they get declined. So
who does that come back to decline? Because I hadn't heard this before.
So when I say decline, meaning like it's not warranted. I'm not a traffic engineer, so I'm not using the right terminology necessarily, but basically it's come back that it isn't needed in that location. It doesn't hit the matrix of numbers that the old Department of Public Works, now the Department of Transportation, uses to determine whether a stop sign is needed at a location or not. So that's decided on a variety of factors that the consultants and traffic people can probably speak to better than I can. But we have turned in almost, I feel like, every intersection in your neighborhood, and most of the time, well, every time, if we haven't gotten a new sign, it's because it hasn't been warranted based on the matrix and the numbers.
Okay, I have a question. So, what is I know it obviously has something to do with the crash history, but like I said, I've seen 2 major accidents at my intersection. I mean, how much does that matter? I mean, in 20 years, well, what else are they looking at? It's like someone's going to get killed, before they put up a stop sign.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I thought.
So NDOT, can you all talk a little bit more about traffic signs and how that has been determined in the past? Because I know I have sent in a list of these in the past on more than one occasion. I know they've come through the hub before. So can y'all speak to reasons why stop signs would not be warranted in some of these places, and go a little bit more into why they are not part of traffic calming? And we touched on it a little bit, but maybe if you can give a little bit more information of why they do, or I guess why they don't slow people down. Could you just give us some more understanding of that?
Brad, if you could do that.
Gotcha. Well, I cannot speak to the previous public works because I'm a consultant who did not work on that. I'm part of the traffic calming team. As far as why stop signs are not traffic calming, I can speak to that. Stop signs are an effective traffic control tool, but they should not be put up just to slow cars, because if cars are just stopping at every single intersection, and every time they stop there, they know there's a very small chance of traffic on the other street, and they always just have to stop for nobody and keep going. That can create a sense of apathy toward the stop sign, and very unfortunately, it can sometimes cause the motorists, maybe ones that you're just cutting through your neighborhood, to want to start rolling through the stop signs. And now we have motorists who are basically disobeying a stop sign and just rolling through stop signs, which can create a dangerous, and they kind of create a distrust for, why is the stop sign here if I never have to stop for a car? And so that's a reason why, while you throwing up a bunch of stop signs you would think would slow traffic, it can actually have the opposite effect if people start knowing they never have to stop there, because there's no traffic. They have to. It's very unfortunate, but we're seeing that not just in Nashville. That's just a general traffic engineering practice. And the other thing we see is, if we do overload too many intersections back to back to back with stop signs that aren't warranted, sometimes we can see vehicles trying to make up for that time, and unfortunately try to go a little faster in between the stop signs, where even if they're stopping at each one, they may try to go faster to make up for the time if they feel like they shouldn't have stopped there. So that's why traffic intersection studies are important, and that's what Marty and Chris do with Nashville DOT, look at the volumes and the traffic data. But just as a traffic calming measure to slow speeds, we generally deter away from stop signs for a traffic calming measure.
And to speak to the warrant process, that's based off of both the speed of the street, looking at the average volume of cars that go by, as well as the crash history at the intersection. So for a always stop to be warranted, it has to meet both of those things, both volume of cars and also the crash history.
Does that provide clarification on engineering and NDOT stance on stop signs? And does that provide any clarity, or no?
Oh, yes, it does. And where do we need to go?
This is Councilwoman Kathleen Murphy. I just wanted to kind of to have y'all go over that to help explain why they've been turned down in the past. But I'll be honest with y'all. The intersection of Woodlawn and South Wilson was an area that we were just pedestrians, car wrecks all the time. And the numbers over there, I think it was averaging a car wreck a month, or a car wreck every 3 months. But it didn't meet the other parts of the matrix. And so it was unwarranted, but we appealed it, and now the sign's there. Of course, my 78-year-old father ran it the first 3 times that he went through there, really embarrassing me. But we were able to, state our case to the traffic commission. They understood that in the greater context it was needed. So the matrix is good, but sometimes, we do have to put a little bit more personality into it at the commission. And so, I mean, that's not a guarantee, but that is an option for some of these intersections that you feel it is needed. But what we could also do is try the traffic calming and then come back with stop signs. A lot of times, I'm not crazy about doing lots of things at once, but maybe seeing, see if the traffic calming fixes some of the problems. If it doesn't fix it all, let's look at the next step, if that's stop signs or what have you, and then look at a next step and kind of, not necessarily start low and move high, because we might be in a situation on some of these streets, it sounds like, where we need to start in the middle with some of these traffic calming measures and go from there. But I just don't want to throw a whole lot of things into the mix where then we don't know which is working and which isn't working. And of course, all of that is kind of coming from the experts, giving us that data and then mixing it with our real life experience.
Brad, could you speak to the process that you go through after the installation to monitor how effective the new treatment is working?
I will, and I'm actually going to sidestep that, Marty, because I believe Chris and Derek are working on that and some of the others. So, Chris, can you actually speak to that, since I think you've been leading some of that on the NDOT side?
Yes, so we are following up 6 months after installation and seeing mainly the speed reduction of the streets. So just seeing, what it was before, what it's become now, and what percentage of change we're looking at.
And if we determine that it doesn't work, we fix it, right? We would go to another option, or speak to that if you could. In other words, we're not going to just put one out and leave it if it doesn't work. We want to make sure that we get to the right solution.
Right, and it's your definition of what you consider working. If speeds are decreased and there's less wrecks, is that if speeds decrease by 1 mile per hour, but there's less accidents or incidents, is that a victory, or is that, so, it's all based off of each neighborhood, what we see happen. But yes, if we don't notice something working, then we will work to get it fixed.
Yeah. It's almost like you would apply the same test you applied for us to qualify.
Correct.
Seems to be. Okay. This is Trisha Scott again on Cherokee. When I envision what I think would work, I think it's the speed on Cherokee. Thinking, for example, at the beginning of one closest to road. Is that right? I think there are speed tables there.
Gotcha. We hear you. So you're expressing an interest in
Yeah,
exploring speed tables on
feedback.
Cherokee Road.
Yeah. That's all. I don't need comments
Okay.
or anything, but I appreciate that y'all are the professionals doing this, and I would go with whatever you recommend, and it's good to know that you'll follow back up if it's not working. I'm trying to be helpful as well.
Absolutely, yeah. One question I have for the neighbors and the council person, I may direct it to the council person first, is a lot of times we do look at our engineering design and where stop signs are. So like right now, we would not spend Nashville's money probably recommending a speed cushion or speed table 50 feet from where they're going to stop anyway at a stop sign, right? Because they should be stopping. So we try to look at where people do have to stop and then try to space some of these cushions and tables around. So we could continue with the speed traffic calming and design things. And to Marty and Chris's point, if we were evaluating and it doesn't work, maybe you all could look at the always stop. The opposite would be if you all want to explore the always stop, see what the data comes back at. As council person suggested, if it's not favorable, you could go through the Traffic and Parking Commission. In other words, if always stops are what ultimately do occur outside of traffic calming, that would influence where we would recommend some of these things. I just didn't know if the neighbors had, or this council person had a preference on which one happens first.
So this is Councilwoman Kathleen Murphy. For those of y'all who weren't on earlier, I wasn't able to get on through my computer, so I'm on my phone. Can I ask the question of the child on Christmas morning, I guess? I don't want Cherokee Park to go the stop sign route, discover that some work, some don't. We go back to the traffic calming program and the money's all been spent in other districts. So selfishly, that's my concern. So what is your plan? And if this is something that is outside the scope of y'all for this meeting, and I need to take it up with Director DeMassimo, are we allocated a certain number? Are y'all dividing by 24? Are you seeing what people need and then allocating money? Because my concern is I mean, I just don't want us to, we finally qualify for traffic calming. I don't want us to get distracted by stop signs that have been turned down in the past, quite frankly, when the speed bumps might be the thing, but when it's our turn to get speed bumps, there's no more money.
Right. Chris, do you want to speak to the budget and roughly how that is allocated around approximately, or would you like for me to?
I can. To answer your question simply, we have money allocated for every neighborhood. So it's not like you're going to turn around and we're going to say, oh, sorry, you didn't respond in time, you don't get any more. It's there. So, we would like to move forward with the traffic calming, but obviously if y'all want to start with the all-way while we design our traffic calming and then have us change it if an all-way stop is warranted, then that's what we'll do. But simply, y'all were selected as a neighborhood, there is a budget there.
Okay, good. I wanted to make sure it wasn't use it or lose it right now. Let me ask a question about what you just said with the, move ahead with stop signs, because that is potentially a shorter process. Talk to us a little bit about what that means, because my concern would be we put stop signs up on some of these intersections for 3 months or 6 months, and then we need to go the traffic calming route. So we pull those stop signs out. What does that do to traffic traffic patterns and things? Because I know whenever traffic changes, confusion happens, more wrecks can happen. So do y'all recommend us asking for to just put up stop signs for a stopgap until you've got something designed and then pull up the signs? I'm not sure that's extremely effective for the neighborhood, for safety, or fiscally necessarily.
So I guess I was saying more in the lines of, if y'all are going to go the route of seeing if they're warranted and then taking it to the Traffic and Parking Commission, then that's one thing that we have to wait on, like Brad was saying, before we put any vertical measures out, because we wouldn't want a vertical measure too close to a stop sign. So
and just to clarify, the waiting is not if you choose to go the stop sign route, councilwoman and neighborhood, it's not whether traffic calming still happens in your neighborhood. It's just understanding where the best spots would be if there's new stop signs. That's what we're trying to kind of engineer for or think through with everybody.
So I think what my request to y'all would be, and I understand y'all are traffic calming side, and I can pull in Mac Rutledge has always been my go-to logical, reasonable stop sign, no stop sign man. And NDOT is, so maybe what we can do is I think y'all have heard tonight pretty clear from my neighbors and constituents. Thank you, neighbors and constituents. Y'all were really specific, which is super helpful to them and to me. And so what I would hope that y'all could do is maybe from here we could sit down with Mac or whoever's got the stop sign evaluations from the past. Let's see what stop signs were not evaluated, and maybe take that into consideration as y'all start designing, and we request, see how close some of those denials were, and see what other ones need to be evaluated. And maybe that all can happen at, earlier, rather than putting signs up and then while y'all are designing, and then you have to change the design, so on and so forth. Is that feasible? I don't want to slow anything down by any means. I know that NDOT got that data somewhere for those requested stop signs. And so I would hope that we could look at that as you start designing.
Yeah, we definitely can. We can definitely have a sit down with Mac, or if, I can check with Mac to see if that data is somewhere where I can look at it and we can look at together to figure out the best route forward.
Because, I mean, I'm always amazed at traffic engineers and the algorithms y'all run, but I'm sure we could take, if those were from 2017 or 2018, 2019, before the pandemic or something, and then, you know, multiply them by whatever special magic y'all do to get it up to speed. I just think looking at that data, I think would help y'all in the design of and suggestion of what goes where, because I think that data should and hopefully inform these decisions. And then again, I missed the first 5 minutes trying to connect. It's my understanding that y'all are going to come. We're going to have another meeting before the end of the year to present ideas. Is that correct? Is that how we're still handling the traffic calming program?
Yeah, the next steps is going to be for our team to kind of look through, talk about the discussion we've had here today, look at the engineering, and prepare a preliminary traffic calming design, and then come back to this group. And we can do that via email or go ahead and wait for the second meeting. Sometimes we send it via email for some preliminary comments, but eventually we'll have a second meeting just like this or just in person, however the neighborhood wants to do it, to sort of display the proposed design for traffic calming. And then from there, the petition process would commence for people to sort of, sign and petition in favor of the design. That would be the final
I
step.
apologize for missing so much of the discussion, but I'll chime in and suggest that while we don't have, scads of participants on this meeting, which I had sort of feared, if you send me the plan, with any verbal explanations you have, we have a very active listserv that people use every day, and I can send it out and solicit comments, and I can guarantee that you will get far more reaction, both positive and negative, I suspect, but still, instructive once we actually send out some actual proposals.
That sounds great.
Grace, I think, Grace, what they were saying is they're not going to have, they'll share the PowerPoint from today, but they're not going to have like actual proposals per street yet. And so what I was discussing with them is that I'd like to get the data that's already been collected from the stop sign evaluations.
Right.
They have that as they're moving forward. And so if a stop sign was close to being warranted at a site, then that should be, maybe that needs to be the stop sign and the traffic calming somewhere else. And so that's something that I'll work on with them between now and the next step.
What I had been told was that, effectively some of the stop signs we were asking for would have meant four-way stops at like 4 intersections in a row, and Metro just didn't want to do it. And one thing they did that was helpful is they put better stop signs that have, red reflectors all the way down, which you can see better in the dark. And they also, some of them have a sign that says the other, the cross street doesn't stop. Both of those things are helpful. They don't totally solve the problem with speeding on Valley that, our residents along there and pedestrians that go on Valley are dealing with. I will offer, if it is at all helpful, if anybody, a group or a single person wants to come and do a half-hour walking tour and basically see, the blind curves and the intersections, I'm more than happy to, meet you and, take you on a fast tour and, invite neighbors who are interested to, either join us or, visit us when we pass their intersection.
Okay, we appreciate that offer, Grace.
Yeah.
I'm Tay Kennard. I live on Aberdeen, and I just wanted to ask, of all these options mentioned, it sounds like you're leaning towards the vertical measures, the speed tables or the speed cushions. On Aberdeen, the stop sign that was added at Aberdeen and Mockingbird has helped. And I wondered are you going to do the same measure on every street, or is it a possibility, say on Aberdeen, that you put in the blinking radar sign or the zigzag painted lines, different from the speed tables or speed cushions, which sound like something's very, very necessary on Valley. I agree with the downhill slope there, and the proximity running parallel to West End. There's more people that cut through on Valley, I believe. And then another concern is that very dangerous sharp curve on Lauderdale. Something really needs to be done there. It's hazardous to walk on that street any time of the day or night. Thanks.
Right.
And I
right.
think that was really brought home when the truck careened around the corner a few 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it took out a light pole and it took out a brick mailbox. And if that brick mailbox hadn't been there, it would have hit somebody's house.
So what do you do with that curve?
I was going that fast.
What would be a solution for that curve? I mean, I don't think it's a stop sign.
So I'll respond first to Aberdeen. So the answer to that comment is yes, we can look at something different. The entire neighborhood does not have to get the exact same thing on every street. So if residents along Aberdeen want to maybe not see cushions or tables, but maybe that speed feedback sign, that's something we can consider. And so that's good feedback. We really appreciate that. Now the Lauderdale, several people have mentioned this Lauderdale curve. One person earlier mentioned the Lauderdale curve being a concern, but also mentioned not wanting any vertical traffic calming measures. So I'll be very honest, my initial thought when I heard several people commenting about that curve was, I wonder if a speed table or speed cushion that really slows people need to go over.
Oh, yeah.
But we heard a resident say they did not want anything vertical that you had to go over.
When you say vertical, do you mean like a speed hump or a speed bump? Is that what vertical means?
Speed table or speed cushion, which is similar but a little different.
What a speed table or a speed cushion is. Sorry.
So we talked about that earlier. The speed table, all 4 of your wheels. Well, I'm a resident of Cherokee Park, just by the way.
Oh,
all 4 of the
cool.
wheels of the vehicle can be on a speed table, I think.
Okay.
A speed
Hold
cushion.
on, I'm working on it here. Yep, I'm trying to get there.
Right.
So Grace, this is what a speed table looks like. It's sort of like a hump.
Oh yeah, I know what those are. Okay.
Yeah,
I just didn't know what they were called. And that actually be, if it's not noisy, I think that might be an appropriate solution if people were on board with it.
Okay, so this is one option, and then the speed cushions are similar, but they're just a little shorter. And this might be another alternative. Either one, cars have to go over.
Because it's a smaller residential street, my suspicion would be the cushion would be a more appropriate solution based on the amount of room there is.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I think that collision really, it scared me.
Yeah,
people in the neighborhood were shaken by that.
Yeah, so when we've heard your comments, about that Lauderdale curve, and how can we maybe look at speed through that curve? Speed cushions are one solution. Again, but we did hear one person who maybe didn't want vertical. So I just want to make sure we're voicing her concern as well. So we may have to look at speed cushions. That may be really the only solution to try to manage speeds going through the curve. We can look at some other options, but that I just want to make sure everybody heard that as well.
Yeah, I'm the one that doesn't like.
Honestly, thought that many neighbors would oppose all vertical solutions and made some sort of a statement in one email, and I got several responses from people saying they are so desperate for a solution that actually works to make people safer, so that we don't have a injury or fatality or somebody's property destroyed, that they are prepared. I think in a situation like that where I would my inclination would be to poll the people who are most directly impacted by it and give they're the ones who are going to have it every time they back out of their driveway, you know, give their opinion more weight. But, you know, I think that might be an appropriate solution for that particular issue.
Yeah. And the city's process is set up to do just that, Grace, where that's why we're going to prepare the design, then have that second neighborhood meeting so people can say what they like. And that's also why the petition is involved. So if residents, there has to be a 70% in favor of petition along each street. And so
cool.
And so that, you know, that's why the city has this in place. So if a few people like an idea, but the majority do not, it may not happen. It's got to be so.
Yeah, the petition sounds good.
Yeah, so that's the process we'll go through. And so in summary, the two biggest takeaways we have are we're here to help. We look forward to partnering with you, the engineers and you, the residents of Cherokee Park. The second biggest takeaway is we've heard from your application, we'll be looking at Cherokee, we'll be looking at Aberdeen and Valley, and then we've also heard interest to look at the Lauderdale curves and Mayfair. We also want to set expectations. I think that if we give what everybody wants, traffic calming on all 5 of those streets, we're going to be over the budget that we can have. So we're going to do our best to find what we think is the best trade-off. But I think all 5 streets, everything that everybody would love, may be a little beyond the budget. So that's what we're going to be. That's what the engineers are going to be taking a look at to see what we prioritize. So when we present it to you all, we can answer kind of why we decided this, why we decided that. And small revisions can still happen after that second meeting. That's why we have it, not to say this is the final answer, but to say this is what we've come up with, and then we have more discussion. But I do want to set that expectation that all 5 streets does spread the budget thinner. We're going to see what we can do and take a look at it, but just want to make sure it kind of communicated that as well.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, we appreciate you being here. I want to pause, Chris or Marty with NDOT. Is there anything else we want to talk about with the Cherokee Park folks here tonight?
No, I think we've got a good idea, and we covered a lot of different ground tonight. So I appreciate everyone taking the time on a Wednesday night to meet with us, and looking forward to working with all of y'all.
Yes.
Thanks. We were ecstatic. So we're thrilled that you guys are working with us on this.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good evening, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.